Okay, it's Wednesday, August 3rd, and I am going to cover the day's events in Ukraine, but particularly I'm going to focus on what happened with the prison explosion, strike, whatever that is. And so I'm going to go through some of the fighting events, and then I'm going to get to that, and then we'll always end as we have done for the last few weeks with some interesting news from Pravda and RT, which has a very different take on things. Okay, so we're going to start right here with, so this is The Guardian. The Guardian collates The Guardian, Al Jazeera, The Times, sometimes The Post. They do a good job hitting major events. So the UN is conducting a fact-finding mission in response to requests from both Russia and Ukraine. This is about the POWs, and we're going to talk about that. That's going to be the main thing that we'll talk about. U.S. Senate has ratified Finland and Sweden's accession into NATO. We'll talk about that too. Ukraine is pulling out 40 peacekeepers from the NATO-led mission to Kosovo. Okay, that I'm going to pause on for a second. I had another article, but I dismissed it. This is not really a story. I mean, they said that they were going to pull everybody back after February 24th. They're finally doing it. Okay. The first shipment of grain to leave Ukraine under the New Deal has gone and reached Turkey. It's reached Istanbul already. That was yesterday. And so, okay, so that's what's happened. Now, let's get to the big stuff. First thing, this vessel has reached Istanbul. This is important because at least it's getting the grain out. About half of the grain from Ukraine is going to get out that would have otherwise gotten out, assuming that these wheels work. And that means that somewhere between 100 million to 200 million people are short on grain. So that either means prices go up, or they have to find a substitute, or they're not eating. So because of the destruction and not being able to get things out, that's what's going to happen, and that's going to be a problem. So getting this out is a big deal, but that's all that we need to talk about with that. Okay, Ukrainian strike likely severs a rail link between Crimea and Kherson as fighting in Donbass is bad. Okay, so first, when we're talking about between Crimea and Kherson, this is a rail link that links the Russians and their supply line. That's what we're talking about here. It comes from the UK Ministry of Defense, which says, as a result of a Ukrainian strike, Russian ammunition train Kherson Oblast in southern Ukraine, it's highly unlikely that the rail link connecting Kherson and Crimea remains operational. If you hit a supply train carrying weapons and you hit it just right, it blows up the rails. So that's what's going on there. It will remain a vulnerability for Russian forces and their logistical resupply route from Crimea into Kherson. And then they also said it's likely that we'll see an increase in civilians attempting to flee in Kherson. I mean, that's not rocket science, but that's a pretty good assessment of ground truth. Okay, so now let's look at Donbass, because in Donbass they were saying like the fighting has just really amped up. It's bad. Zelensky was talking about this, about how, we have HIMARS, but even in spite of HIMARS, it's not quite equal yet in Donbass. And the Russians, let's go back 1 week. Okay, and I'm going to play this. I'm going to press play here, and I want you to watch what's going on over here on the side. This is in Donbass. Here's Sloviansk, here's Bakhmut, and you can't quite see. Let's make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so I want you to watch this thread here as the Russians are having some impact day over day over the last week. It's small, it's incremental gains, but you'll start to see it. See this? See this? Right? These are the Ukrainian defensive lines, and they've taken more here. And so they're making some small progress, but inch by inch they're taking ground, and that's not good. Okay, let's keep going. The Senate votes 95-1 to add Sweden and Finland to NATO. We knew that. Josh Hawley was the only one who voted against it. Rand Paul voted present on the resolution as opposed to voting for it. It's okay, so 95-1 is still pretty overwhelming. Tehran, this is Iran. Russia may get combat drones from Iran in exchange for fighter jets. So it looks like, and now this is Pravda.ru. Okay, so just take it with a little bit of a grain of salt, just because it's Pravda. But I don't know that it's not going to be true. Tehran sent pilots and maintenance personnel to train to work with Russian Su-35 fighters. Iran receives fighter jets in exchange for drones. Okay, I can buy that. It's possible. U.S. Security Advisor Jake Sullivan confirmed that Tehran was trying to sell these, to Russia, and even though Iran was denying that they were going to be involved, no, we just want peace, and I talked about that a little while back, that was what was going on. But okay. Main intelligence agency decision of Russian court recognized Azov as terrorist organization, but it's not a terrorist organization. It's actually a structural unit of the National Guard. As for the recognition by the Supreme Court of Russia as Azov as a terrorist organization, they didn't realize that they are a separate special forces unit of the state structure. They cannot be recognized as terrorist unit just because they are Azov. Now, they could do something that would be terrorist. I mean, that's fair, but they haven't. And that's not the case. They were just saying they're paramilitary. They're not actually part of the Ukrainian National Guard. So it is a terrorist organization. So it's mislabeled. Terrorist attack on Olenivka should be decisive argument for recognizing Russia as a terrorist state. Statement said by Zelensky. What else is needed for this? Is this not a brutal and obvious terrorist act? Not enough for the key capitals of the world to make an appropriate decision to recognize Russia as a terrorist state? Okay, yes, when your facts are proven, that's correct. And they probably will be proven, let's say, but you got to give it time for the inspection. Now, that's what we need. The blast to kill Ukrainian POWs was Kremlin operation, according to Kyiv. Now, here's their arguments for that. Citing intelligence, satellite data, phone intercepts, the officials said that the inmates were killed in a callous, premeditated war crime. They suggested it was carried out by Russian mercenaries from the Wagner Group. Now, you have to prove that, but here's some evidence that seems to line up to make that conclusion. Okay, the graves were dug next to the barracks shortly before the attack. Like, you dug graves before this freak thing happened? Okay, a Russian information campaign was launched describing the fighters as terrorists. Those two things are true, and they start to line up. The prisoners were moved from the building the day before Friday's explosion. That's starting to sound like one thing's lining up next to another, next to another, next to another. The Russians rebased their artillery near the prison complex in an unsuccessful attempt to draw Ukrainian fire. Now that is really interesting, because just a couple of weeks back, we had a report where the Ukrainians based themselves in a nursing home, and then like 50 out of the 70 were nursing home residents were killed, and that's terrible and tragic. You can't do that. So here, if the Russians were actually trying to draw fire by basing their artillery there, that's a war crime. I mean, that's essentially what that is. You can't bring these non-combatants into harm's way. Okay, the Biden administration said that there are no indications that Ukraine attacked this site. Satellite photos released by Maxar Technology revealed that the surrounding buildings were wholly undamaged. Now, a HIMARS strike could hit one building and not hit the others. I mean, that is possible. So that alone is not it. Russian guards escaped without injury. That seems to be pretty telling. The Institute for the Study of War, this was 2 days ago, I think, a U.S.-based think tank said that the evidence strongly suggested that Russia caused the blast by either using a precision strike or an internally planted incendiary or explosive. I read that 2 days ago, and they're pretty sure that it's not the Ukrainians. Okay, so far the Kremlin has refused to give access to the site to the Red Cross and to the UN. Well, that seems to be pretty compelling as well. Okay, so if you line up like these 5 or 6 data points, it seems like one thing after another, like none of them independently prove this, but when you start to line these up, it looks like the Russians are kind of guilty. I could be wrong. I have been wrong, but it's starting to look like that. Okay, the UN to investigate this prison attack that killed dozens of Ukrainian prisoners. The UN is sending up a fact-finding mission. Now, they told reporters, this is the UN Secretary General, told reporters that he did not have the authority to conduct a criminal investigation, but could conduct a fact-finding investigation, like prove what's actually happening. The intelligence arm of the Ukrainian Defense Ministry claimed in a statement on Wednesday to have evidence that local Kremlin-backed separatists colluded with the Russian FSB, the KGB's successor, and the mercenary group Wagner to mine the barrack before using flammable substance, which led to the rapid spread of fire in the room. Now, stop. That there is really important. If that's what happened, then forensic analysts that know what they're doing will be able to tell the difference between a Heimer strike and something started from the ground that spread up. I mean, they have that kind of technology. So it's going to be now. Who knows what the Russians are doing now? They haven't let the UN in yet. They could be scrubbing the place or resetting it or dropping pieces of Heimers around to say, see, look, we found this. Meanwhile, the U.S. believes that it's preparing to fabricate evidence pointing the fingers at Ukraine. Russian officials might plant ammunition for medium-range, high-mobility rocket systems, or HIMARS. More than 2,400 soldiers from the Azov regiment of the Ukraine National Guard and other military units surrendered in May. So this could happen again in a different and this is why it's important to actually do it. It's also important because you want to prove who's lying. Like, whoever's lying will lose a great deal of credibility. Now, if okay, let me put it like this: if the Ukrainians are lying, which I don't believe that they are, but if the Ukrainians are lying, that's going to be a huge loss of credibility to them. If the Russians are lying, we just go, oh, the Russians are lying. They lied about this. They lied about Bucha. They lied about the mall. They lied about the civilian complex where they hit with the missiles, and they lied about Odessa. They just keep lying. So that's why it's hard to believe that the Ukrainians did it, because if they've been proven to lie and lie again, well, that's what's going on. Okay, next article. Russia is ready for Ukraine peace deal, says the Kremlin. Ukraine can end the ongoing conflict at any time by conceding to Russia's conditions, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said on Wednesday. And so you've seen this chorus of people growing of saying, hey, the Ukrainians don't want peace talks. Well, yeah, they don't want peace talks because you're still raping and pillaging their land. I mean, why would they want peace talks? It's going to come down to, because you won't stop, like when they say, well, you can just concede. I once asked when I was a kid, I don't remember how old I was. Maybe I was 12 years old. This kid got into a fight. He had a black eye. And I said, what happened? And he said, well, he wanted to fight and I didn't, so we fought. That's what's going on here. It's not like Ukraine has a choice except to fight. I mean, they can knuckle under and take these peace terms, but then you lose, a third of your country? That's probably not what they're willing to do. Kyiv broke off talks with Moscow after accusing Russia of committing war crimes, which they did, an allegation that Russia said was based on fabricated evidence, which was a lie. And they lie, and they lie, and they lie. And you can prove the lies because you can triangulate with Western press that is independently verifying that this is actually what happened, not what you're reporting in RT. By the way, this is an RT, Russia Today. And I urge you to read Russia Today and Pravda and other Russian news sources so that you can get a sense of what they're actually saying. Okay, Kyiv broke off these talks. Ukrainian leadership has since insisted that negotiations can only be resumed after Russia is defeated on the battlefield. What other recourse do they have? So now that you've violated the rules-based world order by invading your neighbor when you had guaranteed, remember in the Budapest Memorandum, you and the U.S. and the U.K., Russia, agreed to guarantee the sovereign borders of Ukraine in exchange for removing their nuclear weapons. And you're the ones violating it. So what other recourse is there except defeat on the battlefield when you have snubbed the rules-based order that you keep talking about snubbing? Okay, Moscow is if Moscow wants dialogue, it's up to them. This is Mikhailo Polidak, an advisor to the head of the president's office. Moscow is raising the terror level with one hand and inviting surrender with the other. It doesn't work that way. Like, let's terrorize you some more. Why don't you surrender? No. If Moscow wants dialogue, it's up to them. First, a ceasefire and troops withdrawal, and then constructive. Okay, that's right. I mean, if you really want to have peace talks, let's show some goodwill and have some peace talks and for that. But I don't see that happening as long as you're occupying such a huge section of their land. Okay. Um, Actually, from their perspective, any of their land. Next article. This comes from Pravda, and again, I'm urging you to read Pravda just to get a sense of what they're doing. Russian senator, Washington fears Zelensky might escape from the political scene. And this article was so laughable. The U.S. authorities do not trust Kyiv, fearing the flight of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky from the political scene, says Russian Senator Andrei Klimov. Okay, and what he say? A member of the Russian Federation Council is convinced that the current leader of Ukraine is a traitor by nature. Well, I mean, okay, so Russia doesn't like the president of Ukraine. That's not exactly a newsflash. But he says this: the Anglo-Saxon secret services, I guess that's the American secret services, although we're kind of a melting pot in the U.S. I mean, it's a pretty blended place. The Anglo-Saxon secret services are not so much protecting the Russians from the Russians, the comedian who has played the president, but rather from the fact that this showman does not escape ahead of time from the Ukrainian political scene. Look, if he was going to flee, he would have fled in the first day. That's what. Remember on the second day where he was offered an escape, and he said, I need ammunition, not a ride, which is what got the rest of the world to start looking at him and going, wait, who is this guy? By the way, this is the name of my book. And I'm just telling you, it's like, why would he flee now? He made the decision on day one. I'm not going to flee. When offered a ride out, 25 or I did the math early on in this, and there's like 24 or so world dictators in the 21st century alone have fled when they were in similar kind of circumstances, an invading army or civil war or something along those lines, and he didn't. And that's why Ukraine is still in the fight, because he decided, no, I need ammunition, not a ride. Okay, that's all that I have for today. Thank you for your time. Talk to you tomorrow.